Hello and welcome to Conversations in Close Protection with your hosts Chuck Randolph and Chris Story. Our goal is to engage the greater protection community, inspire innovative thought, and as always, continue the conversation around all things close protection. Let's see what the guys are talking about this time.
Good morning and welcome to Conversations in Close. My name is Chuck Randolph, and as always, across the digital divide is the scrutinizing Mr. Chris Story. Sir, happy end of 2020 dumpster fire.
Yeah, well, I think I said this before. It's not like it's going to be over because the calendar changes, you know.
Yeah.
But happy,
I think a lot of
happy New Year's Eve to you, sir.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people, I think, just the idea like something could change. But I'm with you, man. 2021 is just the weird cousin that lives down the road from 2020.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that, every year is like, oh God, I just can't wait for this year to get behind me. Oh, damn you, 2018, damn you, 2019. Hey man, like we need to freaking kind of change our outlook a little bit and just, let her rip.
Wait a minute. Did you see that our good friend Janina gave me my own adjective?
I did. I did. What was? I wish it would be cool if we got her on for a second to tell you what it was. But what did she give you?
Pansophical.
Oh my God.
I love it.
You guys are on the same plane for sure.
Nerd out moment. I guess
except for she's a bona fide nerd, right? I mean,
yeah. I'm just a wannabe nerd, I guess.
Yeah, maybe you've got a 700-pound brain. She's got a 800 or 900-pound brain. So it's like, I'll just stand here and be quiet while you speak.
I had a 700-pound brain, and then college years happened, and it probably back to like a 250.
Wow.
So who knows?
Wow.
Nice. Man. How was Christmas? Good.
It was an isolated Christmas, but it was good. Or social distance Christmas. How about yourself? How was yours?
Yeah, it was really good. I was happy to receive some new workout gear. I think I sent you a picture of the new battle exercise mace I got.
Yeah. Oh, that and your Lululemon. Oh, you weren't talking about that. Never mind. Okay.
Lululemon.
Lululemon freaking yoga pants.
Hey, I need somewhere to put my cell phone.
And then you also, what did you got? You get the mace, and then didn't you get a heavy bag too?
Yeah, I got a heavy bag, and the missus purchased some, what is it, Fight Camp or something.
Yeah, that looks, dude, first off, freaking, they're proud of their prices, so you better use that shit. Secondly, don't use the mace on that. It seems like it's pretty expensive, but I was like, wow, you could do mace fight with
my
your
first thought was
that would be awesome.
I will say the heavy bag and the little, you get little Bluetooth monitors that go in each of your wraps. That's very cool.
Yeah, that looks cool.
Yeah, it's very cool. And I went on and looked at, did some of the free workouts they have, shadow boxing and all that. Much different to hit a bag than it is to shadow box. But hey, man, whatever keeps you motivated. So I got to give props to the missus for thinking like that.
Yeah.
Like I told you, some people got golf clubs, some people got a heavy bag,
and a mace. Let's not forget that, a mace.
Yeah, a friggin' mace. That thing is awesome, dude. Next time we do a video, I'm just gonna bring it in here and hold it.
Well, you got to do your exercise video and just whack tires and stuff. Is that what you do with it? Is that?
So I did look up online. There's a lot of folks. You can do a lot of shoulder work. You can hit stuff with it. There's a lot of different things you can do to unbalance, but it's pretty cool. I saw a couple of YouTube videos, and I don't want to say anything about long hair ponytail guys, with their mace flinging it around, but I was like, okay, that won't be me.
Yeah, because you're, underneath the chainmail, your Lululemons, there they go, So, but
Chris,
it's
I
funny.
just want you to think about me in a pair of Lululemon yoga pants with my cell phone
I will
in my
not
little
be,
cell phone,
I will not
getting
be,
coffee.
will not be scrutinizing that at all, sir. Um,
Nobody
I
wants to scrutinize that.
no, hey, bro, you got those on backwards.
Uh,
I think so. It's funny because a lot of people are like, um, with the functional fitness piece, the
yep.
mace is just another tool, similar to like a sledgehammer or whatever, right?
Yep.
Where, people are doing that for a workout or doing tire flips. And it just makes me laugh when people are like, when are you ever going to flip a tire? When are you going to freaking swing a sledgehammer? Blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's just all about the rotational, the picking up, squatting, all those
Yeah.
functional movements. And it's funny. So I would just also say, like, when are you going to stand there and lift a barbell from your hips to your chest? I mean, it doesn't, I haven't come across any movement in life that you do that. Well, maybe a child, right? I mean, but you only do that once, and it's not like, 125 pounds, but whatever.
Well,
I
I mean,
like it. I think it's cool. I think those kind of workouts are cool. Is it
yeah,
for a workout, or is it for
it
just in
is.
the
It
corner and
is. It's
freaking
not a
feeding
mace.
people?
I mean, I could beat an intruder to death with it. But its primary job is working out.
Nice. Okay. Fair enough.
But more to follow. Or next time we're videoing it, my shoulder might be all racked up, and then you'll know why.
Or
Just don't ask
or
questions.
you might have a blue stripe over here and a freaking shoulder armor and just getting all crazy,
That's where Jenny's like, I told you to get off the computer. Thwack.
Exactly. Yeah, you're
Well,
done.
we're this is it. I mean, 12/31/2020, early in the AM, and I mean, we've had a great run this year. Looking for an even better run last year. I mean,
Yeah.
any thoughts or any just like high level things that come to mind about about last year?
I don't know about high level, but I think the thing that the show specifically is the fact that we made a pretty rapid transition from one show every couple weeks to one a week, which
Yep.
I was pretty proud of for us. And then, as one of our future guests said, man, I'm really excited to see that you guys can get guests every week and the caliber of guests that you get. Um, and he's not a full EP insider. He's kind of on the periphery, and
Yep.
that there is just so much involved in the executive or close protection industry. And I think, I'm proud of that. And the big thing for me again is it's awesome for me and us to be able to tell these folks stories and
Mm-hmm.
highlight these incredible professionals that we have in and around the industry, because we don't see that so much, right? Because
Yeah.
it's that I would say, like Elijah would say, is like you're either the shadow, or you're in the shadows,
Yep.
for the most part, right? And so it's very cool to see that, and it's also was cool for us to expand, globally, with a lot of different guests from different areas, in different spaces, different regions, different nations, etc. So, yeah, awesome, and I'm looking forward to more for next year.
The
How
thing
about you?
to kind of underscore, about us expanding, when we went to weekly, I mean, kids, don't try this trick at home unless you're ready. I mean, it's a lot of work. And again, this is we're just a couple knuckleheads that want to reach out and capture the stories, no pun intended, Chris, of people in the industry, not just the folks you see every day on LinkedIn or Facebook or social media, but also those folks that are out there and learning or doing, and kind of get a full picture of the industry. And I think we've done a good job, and I think we'll continue that track. One of our number one fans, my mom,
Yeah, we need to get her on, dude.
we will. She tells me all the time. She's like, I never realized how complicated your industry really is. She's like, it just, there's so much that goes on to it. And she has talked about her own, her own time as a manager, She managed and supervised in many places, and just talked about like the planning and everything that goes in. So,
Mm-hmm.
I'm happy that we're able to kind of shine outside of the cool guy, cool gal factor, the business of the industry and what it takes. So,
Yeah. Well, I think the important thing for getting her on, aside from, it being cool that she's your mom, is that, again, like you're talking about, that outside perspective, because what we project as an industry versus what other people perceive as an industry can be, I think few and far between. And I think what we're also starting to see is that, at least from our perspective, is that we're pushing that, hey, look, we're not ninjas, right? We're professionals. There's some ninjas, right? But that's not the role, right? It's risk reduction, risk mitigation, well, for that's what it should be on some level. For the most part, it's threat management, threat response, and how do we continue to grow the industry into those areas, and still not lose that cool factor of what it is that we do as an industry and as a profession. And how do we, challenge for us for next year is, how do we speak to those coming in, those that are in it, those who want to grow, and then those who want to move beyond it to be successful. And how do we help folks do that and connect others that do that?
It's at the end of the year, most people just naturally, I think, because of, the calendar year, most people naturally think about what's next year. I mean, you and I are both folks that don't like the word resolutions, but more like goals, objectives, and then how do you measure to those? And a lot of people at this time are thinking about prepping for next year, and how they want to get ready, and what they want to get ready for. How do you do that? I know, like me, you're a person that's more, it's more just like tomorrow, like you said earlier, tomorrow's Friday. But how do you reflect upon, how do you scrutinize the 364 days prior to?
Well, I think in some way it's reviewing your last year, looking at what worked, what didn't, what you should do more of, where you lost your focus, and then planning out the next year. I mean, I don't think it's like, oh, hey, because tomorrow's Friday, I'm going to do these things differently. I don't have to wait for the year to do that. I can just start executing.
Right.
So I review what worked last year, what didn't work last year, how I can make more impact, what my personal goals are, what my business goals are, and then, write those out and then start working to them. And I think, at least for me, the important thing is I can spread myself way too thin, which I did this year.
Shocking.
And so I have to write down the three areas that I need to focus on, and then I kind of post that up and make sure that I'm, whatever I'm doing is in line with those three, unless I need to, I hate to kind of use the term, but pivot or shift into into a different priority. But those three main goals are the things that I try to focus on. And I'll do three of those professionally and three of those personally.
That's cool. It's similar to a good friend of mine, Munish, who works out in New York. Once talked to me about the way that he kind of does some reflection about how he prioritizes his work and what he's doing. It's not so much a navel gazing, like I need to spend more time with my family or long walks, but he kind of makes a quadrant, or will make a chart of all those things that are important, the areas. And then he will go in and try to figure out, and he's a data guy, like how much time did I spend in these areas? And it's forcing some reflection upon himself to say, like, wow, if I said that being involved in the industry was, more important of an objective than maybe flying my drone, but I spent all my time flying my drone, or I spent all my time, and it's a way to look and see, like, how am I skewed towards my time management? Where am I spending most of my times?
Right.
And it's because, he and I had gotten into this conversation because we were talking about industry involvement specifically, and things, we want the industry to succeed, whether it's security, intelligence, close protection. I mean, we are fans of the industry, but his point was taking some reflection to understand where you're spending your time in the industry, vice where you think you are. It was revealing to me. You and I were talking prior to turning the mic on about I think it's a Japanese philosophy called Nikon. It's not the camera, but it makes sense when you understand it. It's more about taking that reflective look and saying, like, what am I getting from today, or what am I getting from Chris Story, or what am I getting, and also what am I giving?
Mm-hmm.
And if you do that with more of a stoic approach, the idea is that you want to give more than you get, but from that, naturally, things like gratitude and other things. And it's interesting because I'm all, me, I love gratitude. I love the kindness games and all those things, but this way to sit and reflect on the percentage of time that you're giving in less of an emotional way, I think can be revealing in terms
Right.
of where am I spending my time? Sorry to be so long-winded about that.
No, I mean, I think it's important from a planning perspective. I mean, I think I've talked about this before, tongue in cheek. You're like, hey, where do you want to be? How do you get there? And, you know, time is limited, right? And the older we get, the the more time becomes valuable, right? And so
Yep.
you're like, hey, do I need to fly my drone? What is that goal? What does that look like? It's not mean that you have to be driven and you shouldn't have any hobbies, but it really means, um, how do you balance out what your goals are with
Right.
your life, essentially, right? I mean, and what is important and what becomes important. And I think that it's important to understand those things and really understand what is important to and for you, and then execute. Like I would say, and I think I talked about this at the beginning of the year, and I've talked about it a couple of times, which is one of my goals for this year that was out of my control was to attend 2 international events.
Mm-hmm.
And that would
We, you got
not being
one.
the IPSB, not being the IPSB, right? And I got one. But one of them was, it was like a random one, and then the other one was going to be Fellum's
Mm-hmm.
annual, over in London. And I met the goal in terms of being positioned to do so, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was helpful, uh, but I didn't have control over the ability to actually attend, right?
Mm-hmm.
So again, for me, writing those goals down, some of those goals down as a focus, even if it's maybe if it's a sub goal for something else, position yourself to be able to do these 3 things, those things come to fruition, you know?
That's an interesting thought, Chris, too. I love that idea where you say, like, positioning yourself. I mean, because really, it's about it's about setting up conditions for success. So I like, I've often, when you mentor folks and all that, and you listen to their goals, that's something that they miss is like, okay, you have this stated objective. What's the criteria for success? In other
Mhm.
words, what does it need to look like? Not what does winning look like, but what does it need to look like for you to get the win, which I
Well,
think is an important, informative question.
right. Well, essentially, you talk about setting conditions, right? What are the conditions that need to be set for me to be successful to do X, right? So you're not saying, "Hey, I'm going to be a millionaire," because that's great. That's a great goal, but there's a path you have to take to do that,
Mm-hmm.
and what does that look like? And what are the best um, what are the best percentages, or what does that box looks like
Mm-hmm.
that allows me to be able to execute that to the best of my ability, right? And what can I control, and what is beyond my control? And I think that really, as
Yeah.
control, you know,
Yeah.
trained, maybe innate control freaks, right? Close
Well,
protection professionals.
yeah. I
We
mean,
we need
we want
we
to
need that.
control the environment.
Yes. Right. So how do you set the conditions for your success? And I think with looking at that overall, that becomes important for goal setting, and again, this doesn't have to, we talking about it like you talked about being reflective, right, at the end of the year, but this should be done monthly, quarterly,
Agree.
making sure that you're on path or on track, and then shifting away from that is a deliberate decision, right? Because it's going to get you it's going to help you set your conditions better,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or the environment has changed, and now you're not able to work within it, which I think unfortunately, a lot of people started to understand that this year very, very late, because COVID changed the conditions for their success. And
Right.
if you're on a travel team, you were out there flapping, unfortunately, because, there was no travel. And
Right.
I think that piece, you saw people shift to training, online training. You saw people shift to fitness. You saw people shift to other roles. I think, how do we prepare ourselves or in the future, because COVID's not going to go away. So now we've got that other risk template on the, or that other risk on the risk landscape or table to say, okay, great. How do I set the conditions for my success within this? And you evaluate your skills, you evaluate your capabilities, and then you move after it in that way. So that's how I look at it.
But I think that's a great, that's a great thing as well to take. And I love the idea, like monthly or quarterly, sometimes even weekly, if it's, something that's an A priority. But the idea of like taking stock in, it's like we recently had Gary Drake on, like, know your job,
Right.
and he was talking about training. But if you take that at scale and say, like, know your job, know what you want to do, where you want to be, and then make those quadrants out, and then, and then in those, right, what are the conditions? Just a question, because, especially from like an MBA perspective and things, can we plan too much? I mean, at what level of detail do you need to, like, because we're risk professionals, but we're risk professionals that sometimes live towards the tip of the spear, if you will, and we want to control the environment. So at what point can you over plan so that you're almost setting yourself up for not failure, but disappointment and frustration, maybe?
Well, I think number one is, what is it? Analysis by paralysis, or paralysis by analysis, right? Where all you're doing is planning, you're never executing. Though, if every time you do that weekly, monthly, quarterly plan or whatever, a lot of that stuff should be making sure that you're on track to do what you need to do, that week, that day, that whatever, in order to get towards your goals, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one of my goals this year is to at least write, one article a month, right? So I don't have to wait.
We have similar goals.
Right. I don't have to wait to write one article a month. I could write 12 articles, right? And then that goal is that box is checked. I think, it's just writing those down, making sure that I have a great appreciation for SMART goals,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Oh, yeah.
Specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely, right? Mm-hmm. Or timely/time bound, right? So, so that way you can hold yourself accountable to something that needs to be executed. And I think the attainable piece out of that becomes important as well, because knowing myself, I can spread myself too thin. So I have to look, is that attainable, or is that a stretch goal? And I can drop it down to kind of a nice to have. So I think that you can over plan without executing. Mm-hmm. And then there's no result, right? I mean, you can plan and plan and plan and plan, and if it never comes to fruition, then you've not done anything. Get it on paper and then execute, right? Because you can always adjust it based on your environment. But I'm also not saying don't plan either. Like, don't go all Leroy Jenkins and just do it live, because you'll find yourself nowhere.
Well, I always think in terms of like a bunch of R's, like recover, restore, reflect, reiterate, remove, reinvent. And, I like from whatever you're doing, like recover from that. If you're on a detail and you come back, it's recovery time. You also have to restore yourself, whether it's your kit, your energy, whatever. Mm-hmm. Reflect on what happened, both good and bad. Reiterate those things that went well, like in your brain, on paper, whatever you need to do to underscore. And that's just like, that went well. Well, why did that go well? Mm-hmm. How can we repeat that? And keep stock of those. If it's tactical and it's a team thing, that's one thing. If it's you personally, that's another thing. Remove the shit that didn't work out. Acknowledge it, but don't dwell on it. I got it. This didn't work because of why. Boom. Let's make sure that's been dealt with. And I think a lot of times we'll get stuck in the remove part because we want to dwell on like what didn't go right, because, we're not control freaks. We're risk managers, and we want to control the environment. We want things to go well because we want a job well done as a job well done. But then lastly, from all those is reinvent, like you say, Chris, whether it's weekly or quarterly or whether you do it once a year. I mean, just the idea of like, there was an old commercial, and you'll probably remember this, Chris. I can't remember if it was Aquafina please don't sue me, water company, bottling company.
Mm-hmm.
But in the commercial, it was, I remember seeing this and I was like struck by the idea. It's like, you have 365 days to do it right.
Mm-hmm.
So this idea of reinvention, and again, this isn't us navel gazing. This is like, okay, you went out, you tried to network with somebody, it didn't work. Boom. Go through your R's, reinvent. Boom. I need to do something else. Who is Chris Story today? Is he different tomorrow? Is he different the day after? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and what do they need to do? And I think those are important.
Yeah, I think the two things out of that stack that speak to me, I always say the two things, but
just two things.
just two things exactly, is the reflection and reiteration piece are, what are we doing that we need to continue doing, and then what are we not doing, or what are we not doing that we need to do, and what are we doing that we don't need to do, right? That moves us toward those goals. And I think that those are very important questions to ask, because it helps you prioritize based on impact, right?
Yeah.
And impact is and should be one of those foremost goals. And if you're not going to make any impact, or if it's not an impact, then it's a passion or whatever the case is, right? I mean, it's a hobby or whatever. Then the next piece is, I wouldn't really say, like, I understand the reinvent piece, but from my perspective, it's just more of an adjustment, right? Like, because I might, one day I'm rolling a tie and a suit, from Jeff Mitchell, and the other one, next day I'm freaking, wearing a leisure suit. I don't need to go that crazy, but it's just, how do I continue to adjust? Yeah, Lululemon. Well played, sir. How do I readjust what I did?
Yeah.
How do I readjust what I'm doing? How do I refocus my effort? Like you said, the networking thing didn't work. Why didn't it work? Okay, and then reapply. And that's probably better for your R. From my perspective, is reapply.
No, I agree.
Totally
agree. And I'm gonna make that change to it, because I think it's also like, what do you know when you're behind the scope? Okay, that one didn't work. We need to adjust. We need to readjust and do it again.
Right. And I think that piece becomes important, because A, nobody's perfect, and B, we're always striving for improvement, or we should be. And for me, I think those things, all of those lend itself to where we're headed, right? So, one of the things that in this industry is we're very, very, we're very, very much scrutinizers of other people's work, but most importantly, their failures, right? We don't ever go, hey man, I just wanted to reach out and tell you did a really good job on that arrival and departure, because nobody cares, right? It's got to go right. If it's messed up, then they're gonna ride you like a plastic sheep, right? And the next piece is that as humans, we go, hey, my last interaction with Chris Story, he was an asshole. So he continues to be an asshole, and I haven't seen him in 5 years, right? Sure. And so we hold that image in our mind, right, for that length of time, and then we just go, yep. Well, 5 years later, you run into him, and you have that perception going in, or that I guess I'll just say perception. You've got that perception going in, and then you're like, wow. Okay, maybe he wasn't, because we assume that person never grew. We give ourselves all the credit for growing, but we don't assume that person ever grew. So I think being open to understanding that hopefully that person has had some self-reflection and has made some refinements and adjustments to what they've done, that puts them on a higher level or higher plane, than when you left them. And those are I think for me, that's what I expect of people, right? And I force myself to do that, because I understand how we look at folks as well, right? We only remember their mistakes.
It's interesting if anybody remembers commuting. Say you're driving to the office and somebody cuts you off. You go into and I'm like, we're at the water cooler or whatever we're doing. I'm like, Chris, man, this idiot caught me off. I don't know what I was thinking. And, we're talking about that. But do you ever you never went into the office and said, I cut somebody off today?
Right. Well, I think sometimes, like, when that you did it, you kind of do my bad, But
I mean, you wouldn't go into the office and say, Chris, check it out on the way to work. I cut somebody off, but I said my bad. Right. I said my bad,
bro. I said it with all due respect. What's your problem?
But
Yeah.
I like that, the idea, like, hey, look, people change, everybody changes. We have bias, accept that you have bias, even about yourself. And, be reflective in that, in terms of, like, again, you meet Chris Story and he's an asshole. Well, that was your perception. Why was it? Was it true? What did you get from him? What did you give, et cetera, et cetera? I mean, nobody know. I guess what I'm saying is nobody knows what's going on behind the curtain.
Mm-hmm.
That guy that cut you off, we don't know. Maybe he was on his way to the hospital, or, maybe he had just gotten, doesn't mean he should have cut you off. I mean, I'm not, it still would piss me off too, but at the end of the day, instead of raging out or focusing on the bad, just kind of try to understand, like, hey, there are factors around that I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
What does that tell me about myself, if
Right.
anything?
Right. And I think this is important, just because as we talk about those folks in the industry and with the industry, is that we can't go through life thinking, we've got to understand our impact on the environment as well. Like we talk
Right.
about setting those conditions for success. If my impact on the industry, or my impact on the environment, my impact on my surroundings is negative, right?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it can be and should be, right? I mean, you should have a negative impact on somebody else's behavior. That could be a good thing, right?
We want to interrupt the potential bad actors,
Right. Right. But if it's always negative, or the result is never positive, or the outcome or impact is never positive, then we need to readjust, that approach. And I think that's the part of that, like, higher level thinking, is what do I do to impact myself, my teammates, my team as a whole, my leadership, all of those things. And what is my impact on that environment, right? Because we're very, like you said, we're very, very quick to point the finger, but it never really goes. That first part of reflection is never, what was my responsibility in that piece, right?
Well, it's interesting. If all you ever focus on is getting cut off, then that's what that's what your focus becomes. That's what your energy becomes. Right. I got cut off. What's the second, third, fourth, fifth orders of effect from that?
Right.
And think about that on a detail. If all I ever see is the problem in the issue, then everything's a problem and nothing is solvable. As opposed to, if I don't see the cut, if I see, like, oh, hey, I'm too close, or I did something else, or I have a different look at it, and what I see is, like, what I focus on is the guy or the gal that let me into traffic because, it was heavy and they waved me in.
Yeah.
Oh, you think about that on a detail too. If I see the opportunities, like, oh, we dealt with this individual at the hotel. They were great. This is awesome. Here we go. Here's another thing. Okay, that's a bit of a problem, but here's how we're going to fix it around. Suddenly your mannerisms and everything changes. And again, it's a mindset as well. I mean, and it's resilience, as as we talked about earlier in the year.
Yeah, with Gav Schneider. Yeah, I think that mindset is and can be helpful to help people grow, be better individuals to make better teams. Looking at the whole versus the little. And I think the cool thing is that we get to talk to a lot of people who actually understand that. And I guess, like we talk about, that became a theme of the approach, right? Is we get to find people who are really scrutinizing the industry or their role in it, and then going, hey, here's how I make it better. Here's what my approach is. And I'm thankful that we can bring that to, that it's not just us, right? It's other people, and that we're learning from them and they're learning from us.
Is that a product of a pandemic environment, you think, this year?
I think I think everybody and their brother has been on a podcast this year, right? Or a Zoom call or whatever, right? I mean, I think that was a product of it. I think it's a product of, like we talk about, hey, we're only travel people. We have nothing else to do. So then great. Again, immediately you saw people focusing on self-education. How do I come out of this better, right? Readjusting, Yeah, I mean, I think it is, but I think maybe.
I think it's
the pandemic.
I think COVID
opened the box
exacerbated
for it a little bit. Yes, I agree. I think it opened the box.
I mean, you can't be on a travel team and maybe have gone international or been on a tour or been on a bus for a long time or just sat in an airport or somewhere for a long time and not thought, like, where am I going? What am I doing? What's next? What do we have to call? Even, and that's just not for executive protection or close protection industry. That's anyone that's in business, whether you're in a corporate environment or small business or you own your own thing. I mean, you're constantly kind of going through all those R's and then readjusting. But I think COVID.
I would say sometimes we make mistakes and we don't readjust until we get to the end of our rope, right? So I think some of those things is that, like, you're tired or you're done traveling or you don't want to do something else or whatever the case is. And I think that's the important reflection piece, is to say, think about it now and prepare now, not when you're tired. Not when you're like, nope, I'm out and I want to do something completely different, because we need to plan for those exits now. And we're seeing that with veterans, we're seeing that with other people, where so that you can land where you need to be. And I think for whatever reason, I think there's very few people that really go, hey, here's where I want to be in 20 years. And they create those conditions for that success. And they say, here's what I need to do. And this is where I need to go. Right now we're like, you find somebody that's been in the industry for 10 or 12 years and I'm like, oh, I think I want to be a director of security, and I'll put my name out there. And then they get upset because they're not getting a whole lot of love back, because they haven't set those conditions to where you're known, or you're a known quantity, or you have the education or experience or set up for all of that. And I think, interestingly, as we talk about planning for a new year, or you plan for a new career, or you plan for whatever, what do those conditions look like so that you can walk into those when you're ready to, not when you are over it and fed up and just need to,
Absolutely. Never try not to make plans out of emotion. That rarely works out well.
It rarely works out. I'm winning the lottery, everybody.
Here we go. Boom.
That's right.
What are we thinking about for this next year, prediction wise? I mean, we're going to see some type of vaccination. I don't know if we'll see travel, business travel and things immediately picking up, but we'll also we see new strains coming out. I mean, I'm not making political statements or any deep state comments or anything like that, but I do think we're going to see some change in the environment. And how do protectors and folks need to think about preparing to readjust to meet whatever new demands there are?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a crystal ball. And I think at this point, it might be better just to go with the old crazy 8-ball. Remember that, where you just shake it up and go, okay, you ask it a question and, which
is ask me again later.
Right. Which isn't as creepy as the Ouija board. But I think we're going to see the ebbs and flows that we did this year, and trying to force ourselves to get back to the old normal, right? Hey, you'll see some folks that are, at the end of the year, reevaluate what return to work looks like, reevaluate what travel looks like, reevaluate because we're going to start to need to do these things, right? Reevaluate what even brick and mortar shopping looks like, reevaluate what supply chains look like, and do we need, will just-in-time manufacturing work still, or do we need to have large distribution warehouses to hold a lot of these goods, a la what you're seeing with Amazon regionally now? Will people adjust those from a business perspective, and then what does security look like for that, right? I mean, because I think I may have a different perspective, but we had a pretty tumultuous year, right? I think we've used dumpster fire almost as much as we've used John Wick, right?
Yeah.
With all these layers of stress on society globally, there's a lot going on, right? And people are freaking stressed. If there was no COVID and we just had an election year, people would still be stressed, right? But we had COVID, we had riots, we had people taking over portions of cities, we had people being attacked, we had law enforcement under a lot of scrutiny, we've had tumultuous elections, and then on top of it we had COVID, lockdowns, people out of work, right? So we're seeing the face of and I'll use just globally, but the U.S. as we know it is likely to be completely different, right? Daily life is going to be likely to be completely different. as we do these things, the opposite, like you talked about, commuting, right? How many people are going to be losing their freaking minds when they got to go back to the work for the first month,
Yep.
right? And they're stuck in traffic and something that they were used to, they didn't have to deal with anymore. So we have new stresses that we're used to, and now we're reintroducing old stresses that we're not used to that are going to really, really elevate um, the overall stress factor for society. And I think we're going to start to see a lot of friction.
It's going to
That
make
was a long way to get to the friction piece, but I think we're going to see a lot of friction
well, it's
regardless.
going to be an interesting year for threat assessment.
Oh, for
you know,
sure.
and this whole idea of like hunters and howlers, and go back and listen to Brian Flannery or Philip Grindell, and like this whole idea of hunters and howlers and what's going on, and in the protection business. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of stress, a lot of people freaking out about the change. Some people don't take change well. Some people, they just love it. But
Yeah.
You're right. I mean, and I think inherently people were hoping like, hey, 2021's here, and now it's going to go back to the way it was in 2019, and
Right.
it's never going to go back to that.
Right. I mean, look, just culturally, even I was watching a movie last night. I told you about it. What was it called? What I said it was called? I can't remember now.
The brothers, or
Something.
The buddy
games. God. Anyways, if you guys want some silly time, there's the buddy games. Worth it, just if you need to laugh. And you're watching the show, and they're all in close proximity, and you're like, hey, we're what about the masks? Right?
Yeah.
Just because you're used to seeing it. It has nothing to do with like whether you believe or not, or whatever the case is. It's just like, hey, nobody's wearing a mask. That's kind of weird, right? Because culturally we've changed to at least, you're looking for people wearing a mask, right? So all of those things are going to have a huge impact on, okay, great. Let's say we go back and the NFL is at 75% instead of 25 or 30. Likely some people who have been isolated for quite some time are going to be freaked out in crowds. Right. I mean, the positive thing for protectors is, hey, 6 feet of space allows you 100% increase in your reaction and response times. Right.
Yep.
That's a great thing. But now it's in close proximity, and it makes it, your visibility has been reduced by 100% again. And now it's about reaction time, prevention. There's a lot of dynamics that go along with this that'll make it very, very interesting for protectors over the next couple of years.
Well, and there's opportunities in that too. Like, hey, I'm a protector. We know a lot of people in the industry also do event risk management, as I like to call it, or some call it event security. Now understanding like it's much more than just making sure that load in and load out goes well, and that the VIPs show up. And now we've got to think about what needs to happen in terms of protocols. What if somebody calls me up and says, hey, what do you recommend for protocols for this event? And making sure that you're ready to answer those questions in a thoughtful, scientific manner. And so yeah, there's going to be opportunities within the din, as you would, or if you will, as well.
Yeah, I think, you bring up great points. Is that I think the thing that the 2021 is going to bring is, how do we, I hate the term new normal, but how do we normalize where we are now, right? So like you said, those COVID precautions, what does that look like? We're going to conduct meetings. What does that look like, right? We talked about everybody laughing about, hey, can you do a risk assessment for me after the pandemic, right? So to me, another opportunity is doing a risk assessment for return to work, right? Because you've had this massive gap where people haven't had to work, they haven't had to wear pants, they haven't had to shave, they haven't had to do anything, right? They could be, whatever it is that they wanted to do, as long as they got their work done. Now you're saying you have to come back to work with a bunch of different people, follow the old norms, right? Where is the risk in that? And I would say there's a lot of opportunity for risk and threat assessments there to say, hey, what does return to work look like culturally, based on what people have been living for the past, at this point, it's 8 months. I think there is and should be a lot of that, because there's going to be a lot of impact there, I think.
That's kind of, do you remember back when the idea of the cyber breach was like, oh my God, we had a breach, and it was crazy, and it was known. And then everyone was kind of waiting like, okay, well, when will we return to the regular cycle? And we haven't. It's just continued.
Right.
There's more breaches. There's more issues. There's more stuff. There's more stuff. It's concentric. And that's how this is too. I mean, you're right. It's never going to be 2018. It's never going to be 2019. It's going to be what it is moving forward. And I think there are some opportunities to come in and say, hey, look, there's a plan to return to work. Have we factored in these risk assessments, or have we factored in how we might deal with, potential issues from a return to work? Mm-hmm. And then, on the flip side, people will start traveling again. Mm-hmm. They will start traveling. And with that, understanding what does that mean and we've talked about this on the show multiple times. What does that mean if I'm going to an FBO? What does that mean if I have to pick a principal up at the airport? What does that mean at a hotel? Mm-hmm. What does pre-advance and advance really mean now? Mm-hmm. And what's added to it? And, what do we need to be prepared to do that?
Right.
And is it in line with some standard that we can point to? So if a principal says, hey, you guys did this based on what?
Right. And yeah, what standard? And then the other thing is that, from a risk perspective, the protector says, hey, I'm going to go do the advance. I'm going to absorb most of the risk to keep the CEO or VIP risk free. Where does that stop? Right. So example, Chris goes in and does the advance and clears the room, and he's the only person that goes in the room first to make everything's done. And then I get COVID. Does my coverage or my pay continue on, right? Because mm-hmm. I accepted that risk, or does it stop and you recycle somebody else and we continue to go, right? Those are all considerations that are going to have to be put in place, especially for a lot of contractors, right? I mean, what does that look like? And this isn't something high risk, low probability like getting shot, right? This is right. Like, regardless of what the percentages are, there's still a global issue. So mm-hmm. What does that look like? And I think, all of those protocols are gonna have to become in place, because as protectors, they are pushing themselves out front to ensure that the protected don't, don't mean to rhyme, but don't become infected.
Boom.
Yeah.
I love it.
Unfortunately, almost went Dr. Seuss there, but
the protected, they don't come infected because protocols have been erected. Boom. Oh man! But fortunately, one thing for sure is
that's very philosophical.
Yeah, that was pan something. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, we will continue to think about those and get people on. And as we see things, adjusting in the world, making sure that we're informing so that people are, our folks can adjust as well and roll with the punches and be ready to get out there. I mean, it's going to be an exciting year. That's for sure. I think in some ways it'll just be continuing. It's just going to continue to be what it was. But I think it's a setup year for sure for a lot of people. Like, what are you doing to set yourself up? Right.
And going with their theme of ours, this is almost like reset, right? What does that look like? Great. I did all these FEMA courses. How does that help me in the larger scheme of things? Or do I need to do other courses to prepare myself for, you talk about cyber, right? I mean, how do I better position myself for cyber, or to deal with cyber threats? I think everybody wants to be in the space. I don't think there's a bunch of people that are looking to go like, all right, cool, I'm just going to go be an Uber driver. I think, you look at the landscape, you look at the threat landscape and see what risks are on the table and figure out how you can position yourself to mitigate those.
Yeah. Many people are working from home. That includes executives. So we have a state security, we have, that includes, security on edge devices, whether that device is a human or whether that device is a thing, or mm-hmm. there's a lot of things. There's always going to be opportunity. I guess that's what we're getting at with this, people. Right. There is opportunity.
Yeah, and I think we talked about this before, right? Like supply chain, especially with this latest, what was it? The SolarWinds attack.
Oh yeah.
Talked about, software supply chains and other supply chains. I mean, the supply chain has been disrupted significantly, a la toilet paper and anything around that and other goods, that are seasonal, opportunities like we talked about before, supply chain security. It might not be you standing out there beside beside a food truck, but it also might be, something, whether it's inventory, shortage, leakages, anything like that you're managing or supporting, or loss prevention or anything else like that, there's a ton of opportunity out there.
Yeah. And that's what we're saying, folks, is opportunity is there. Prepare yourself to take advantage of it. That's, I mean, that's kind of everything in a nutshell, whether it's personally, professionally. I mean, the opportunities are there for you. Get yourself if you're in a rut, get yourself out of a rut if you can, and take stock and look at the opportunity if because things are going to start moving and grooving at some point, and we need to be ready as an industry. And I think we are.
Yeah. No, we're getting there. I mean, I think we keep repeating this message about, looking for what's out there, because I think a lot of folks are like waiting to get back to, being the guy or gal that's holding the door, being the guy or gal that's hitting 180 countries a year, being the guy or gal that's doing, that's next to the man or the woman. That might come back, but how do we fill those gaps, and how do we become better at whatever the end is, right? And I think that was the crazy thing about the whole pandemic was everybody's like, our world has been turned upside down. It's all, I don't know what we're going to do, right? I mean, that was the messaging throughout March. And then suddenly it was December, and it was like, holy crap, I've never been so busy. I didn't have to travel, but, I was working like a freaking, 16-hour days, doing all the things, so we find a way.
And there are still there are still things that need protection. There's still assets that need protection. There are still people that are moving around the world and doing so. There are opportunities to do that, but those opportunities, I think, should be highlighted with additional skills and additional understanding, so that they will, like Elijah had said, you want to be the one they call back.
Right.
And those additional skills are going to get that second call, or even get that first call. So,
right.
Well, I mean, it's been a hell of a year. It's been a great year on conversations and close protections for sure. I am grateful for you, Mr. Story, my longtime friend, peer, colleague, listening post, many things. We've been able to do this.
Adjective post.
Mm-hmm.
And you get a shirt with all the adjectives you've used.
We should put it. That should be a T-shirt or a coffee mug, with just all the adjectives and your face on the front.
Yeah, my caricature. Nice.
But yeah, it's been a good year, and I'm already looking forward to kicking it off next week with season 4.
Yeah, crazy.
But any last thoughts as we move to wrap this episode up and get on with our New Year's Eve?
Well, you talked about gratitude, and I think at the risk of sounding like a broken record, I'm very thankful for the opportunity to have a platform where we can talk to and celebrate, people who are doing great things in the industry, whether they're new, whether they've been in and around the industry for a very, very long time. I think and know that we have been able to connect some really cool people that listen to the podcast and then go, hey, I'm going to reach out to that person on LinkedIn because I heard about him over here, or I heard about him over there. And it doesn't have to be, hundreds of thousands of people. We've got a small community, and I'm happy to know that it's expanding, and I'm looking forward to connecting to other communities over the next couple of seasons.
Yeah, it's been an honor for sure to represent the tales and the lineage of the industry, and continue to do that, and continue to capture all these stories so that we don't lose them. And byproduct of connecting folks and enhancing the industry. I mean, that's just gravy. Definitely a labor of love, and we'll continue to do it through the next year. So, well, This has been Conversations in Close Protections, the New Year's Eve celebration, if you will. I hope everyone has a fun and safe New Year's. We will be back here next week with season 4, episode 1. So from the very scrutinizing Mr. Chris Story and the pansophical Chuck Randolph, happy 2020 and an even happier 2021.
Also, the R in recover might mean for most of you recovering from tonight into tomorrow and maybe even the next day.
Gatorade. All right, everyone, have a great rest of your year, and we'll see you next week.
Good times.
You've been listening to an episode of Conversations in Close Protection. Email us at protectiontalk@outlook.com and find us on your preferred podcast platform. Please take a moment and consider rating us to help others find Conversations in Close Protection too. Look for us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and other social media spots. Conversations in Close Protection is brought to you by your hosts Chuck Randolph and Chris Story. Our engineering editor is the mighty Aaron Peck. Please remember that all opinions expressed do not represent those of any organizations or companies the hosts are affiliated with. This is Rachel saying watch your six and keep your heads down.